Hello, it's a check-in for Chapter 3 of Clearing the Plains by James Daschuk. Chapter 3, which is Early Competition and the Extension of the Fur Trade and Disease, 1740 to 1740 to 82, so 1782. So this is further extension. This is basically on both sides of the prairies. There's disease and stuff like that, but it hasn't actually encouraged in. This is when it does actually go, it kind of encourages, it goes further. The disease and the fur trade itself go further in. There had been the buffer of middlemen, basically either mostly just like Aboriginal traders who would come in, get the furs, and then come out. There was less chance of transmission of disease. Now, what seems to be happening is that there's been kind of semi sort of a resolution of the conflicts between France and Britain. Britain has gotten Quebec, and they're now we, instead of just having the Canadians coming in, which is the kind of the French Montreal-based traders, very kind of individuals. We have the HBC, which has got the English grant. It's the big corporation, original kind of corporation of Canada, really, that has the grant to come in to kind of the more the plains, that area, to get more furs. They're actually building places along the way, and it's eliminating the middleman. At first, the middleman people who are supplying the furs trades are not happy about this. They're getting cut out of the deal. But this seems to soon give way to that. There's the big need for all these trading companies and all the traders to be fed. This isn't land that actually can support a ton of people on it. So there's a great demand for food, which is where the indigenous tribes of the area seem to start actually specializing more in bison, in the idea of using bison and pemmican, which is, I guess, preserved. I think it's preserved bison meat. Basically, it's just like it's a highly concentrated, something that could last you through winters and stuff like that. So you start getting kind of more monoculture of the native tribes. Like, when we think about it as like, it's later on when the bison all get killed off, spoiler alert, there's this like, the natives were so dependent on the bison, and so when that died off, they were screwed. But actually, it seems like it's more complicated, as all these things are more complicated than that. That they got turned into more of a monoculture, basically as a response to what was happening to them. This was the way they were going to get trade. Also, and at the same time, just the continuing bashing of the diseases that were sweeping the area. And indeed, as the traders come in, that disease then does come into the Central Plains area, and starts decimating the populations there. And these are, I guess, again, virgin soil populations, so it goes through and it's wiping out huge, like they're talking about, like, there's 50 people, one survives, those kind of odds, 50 to 1. Also, it's interesting, like, just basically how unwelcome both the HBC and the Canadians were in the Central Plains. Like, it basically wasn't safe to travel because they were, either harassing or burning areas to protect their kind of their goods, or the Canadians were, it seemed to be very much the whole we're going to keep the indigenous peoples to bring us the furs, because we're going to supply them with alcohol. A lot of alcohol pushing here. It's I guess it's the easy drug of choice that they introduce into the area, and unfortunately starts a terrible cycle with all the cultural destruction that's happening. A cultural destruction that's happening sort of as a side effect of it's really not seem to be like the intended effect of the HBC and the Canadians to do. In fact, it's inconvenience for them because through a lot of this, it's just like all the people that they deal with, all the native people that they deal with that are going to bring them the furs, keep on dying and dying and dying. Now that doesn't stop them. More It's interesting just in this period of like basically the people that were there die off to the point of like basically any survivors have to kind of bunch together and create a new much more weakened new culture. But you also have native tribes that have already been exposed and I guess have survived to some degree. They come in and come into the area, encourage into the area and stuff like that. But it is one of these things. It's like it's really striking. Dashchuk kind of has kind of all these reports from the traders, mostly HBC. Hudson's Bay Company is a corporation. They are centrally controlled, so they're continually people who are their people on the ground are continually sending reports back. So there is a wealth of information to get that side of the story, of the British side of the story. The Canadians, the French, I believe, the French Montrealers, they're individual entrepreneurs, all competing with each other. Individual, not the need to write reports to somebody back in the old world about all this stuff. So it's much less represented. So you hear a lot more about the nasty stuff that the Canadians are doing versus the Hudson's Bay people. But the Hudson Bay people are the ones who are actually writing the reports. So, and they're writing the reports about their competitors. So it's not going to be complimentary. But even so, you have these reports of just it's like it's fatalistic. Like the guys say like, yeah, they brought in furs, and yeah, I expect I'll never see them again because that's the amount of people who die, or it's just like never has in the Hudson. The guy speculates in the letter, never in the Hudson Bay letter, that the doleful tidings of this, that much of the greater part of the Indians whose furs had formerly and hitherto brought to this place are now no more, having been carried off by that cruel disorder of the smallpox. And then he lists the goods and why they don't even, why we had this much, now we have this much, but even this much was brought in by people who are already dead. So it's just this, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a European to come upon this, and it's like, why are all these people dying off? And maybe just not like trying to wrap your head around it, trying to make sense of it. I guess that's where you get into the thing of, they seem to be a very disease-prone people. It's like, so it's like entire cultures are wiped out. The survivors are uniting to create kind of a new culture, like, they call it ethnogenesis, of like, distinct tribes have had to come together to survive. So, it's weird amalgams that are not like formed over thousands of years. This is like within like a couple of decades, you go from being two separate things to being like a little awkward thing, and you have the increased stuff of more and more native tribes that are surviving from the thing are being brought in from the coasts and pushing into the area. It's just, I can't imagine like just like the chaos. And like the death. I'm starting to read a kind of a history of Canada at the moment. And there's a bit of a thing of like, those hardy traders coming in from the thing. And it's just like, yeah, but it's like, I don't think they capture just quite the grimness and the destruction. And I mean, a lot of the people who are coming in, I know from other sources, seem to be kind of like, they're the chancers. They're the hard-bitten people. You have to be tough. You have to be maybe slightly psychopathic in some ways to be able to live in this kind of this thing. It's like, or just